Blood soaked through my shirt as I pressed against the canyon wall. 3 riders circled below, their rifles gleaming in the harsh Arizona sun. The woman beside me clutched her wounded shoulder, dark eyes fierce despite the pain. "They will not take me alive," she whispered in broken English. I checked my ammunition. 2 bullets left. The bounty hunters knew we were trapped. Their leader spat tobacco juice and grinned up at our hiding spot. "Come down easy, Jackson. We only want the Apache woman." But this wasn't how it started. 3 weeks back, I was riding home from the trading post when I spotted something in the desert heat. At first, I figured it was another mirage dancing on the dunes. Then the figure stumbled and fell hard. I spurred my horse closer. A woman lay crumpled in the sand, her body light as dried mesquite. When I lifted her, dark hair tangled with grit clung to her sweat-streaked face. Her dress, once fine handiwork, hung in tatters. Her lips were cracked white from thirst, but her eyes still burned with the spark of someone who refused to quit. I placed her across my saddle, without a word. She didn't fight me, just closed her eyes and trusted a stranger with what little strength she had left. The nearest water was a spring beyond the ridge. We rode hard, dust clouds trailing behind us like smoke signals. By the time we reached the rocky pool, she could barely lift her head. I knelt beside her and held my canteen to her lips. She hesitated at first, suspicion flickering in her dark gaze. But thirst won out. She drank deep, water spilling down her chin as she coughed and steadied herself. Color slowly returned to her hollow cheeks. Even weak as a newborn colt, something wild and guarded remained about her. She watched me like a hawk watches a snake. Her words came slow and careful. "Men hunt me. Enemies want me gone." The details scattered like wind-blown leaves, but I understood enough. She'd run for days without food or water, choosing the desert's mercy over falling into their hands. I wrapped her in a horse blanket and helped her onto my mount again. The ride back to my cabin stretched quiet, just the creak of leather and steady hoofbeats on hardpan. Every so often her head rested light against my back, breathing shallow but steady. She was trusting me with her life. I felt that weight settle heavy on my shoulders. My cabin sat tucked between red rocks and sparse mesquite trees. Nothing fancy, but enough to shield her from the desert's cruelty. I carried her inside and laid her on my bed, covering her with another blanket. For days I cared for her best I could, made broth from jerky and wild onions, offered water every hour, cleaned her wounds with whiskey and torn cloth. She rarely spoke, and when she did, just a word or two in English, but her eyes never stopped watching me. There were moments I caught her staring, measuring, questioning, like she was deciding if my kindness was real or if I'd betray her trust too. I never pressed for her story or the danger she'd fled. When she was ready, she'd tell me. Instead, I focused on small things. Left food by her bedside, made sure she stayed warm, showed her she was safe without saying the words. Slowly her shoulders eased. Her breathing grew less troubled. Outside, the desert raged on as usual. Windstorms howled. Coyotes cried in the darkness. But inside my cabin, fragile peace took root. On the 3rd evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, I found her sitting up for the first time. She'd wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, hair falling in loose waves over her face. When she looked at me, something had changed. The suspicion had softened into unspoken gratitude, maybe even wonder. She held my gaze longer than before, and I felt the weight of her silence. That night, desert wind whistled through cracks in the wood. I sat by the fire, carving a piece of pine to pass time. She moved closer than ever before, then reached out and placed her hand gently over mine. Her touch was warm, steady, deliberate. I turned to her, startled, and found her eyes shining with new intensity. Her lips trembled as she spoke, voice carrying both vulnerability and steel resolve. You helped me when no one else would. I want to give you something greater in return. Her words hung heavy in the smoky air. I didn't know what she meant yet, but I understood it wasn't said lightly. This was more than thanks. It was a promise. Maybe even a bridge between two lives that had crashed together under Arizona's merciless sun. But now, pressed against this canyon wall with bullets flying, I wondered if her gratitude would cost us both our lives. The bounty hunters had tracked us here. They wanted her for reasons she'd finally told me the night before. She was Naeli, daughter of a respected Apache medicine woman. White settlers had accused her tribe of stealing cattle. The accusations were lies, but lies with bounty money behind them made dangerous enemies. Jackson, the leader called up. Last chance. Send down the woman and ride away clean. Naeli squeezed my arm. You should go. This is not your fight. I looked into her fierce eyes and knew I couldn't abandon her. Not after everything. Not when she'd offer me something I'd never expected to find in this harsh land. Ma'am, I called down to the bounty hunters. I'm afraid I can't do that. The canyon fell silent, except for wind through the rocks. Then gunfire erupted. Morning sun painted the canyon walls gold as we sat on my cabin porch. Naeli's shoulder was healing clean, and the bounty hunters had retreated after losing one of their own in the firefight. But I knew they'd be back with more men. My people have a saying, Naeli said, grinding herbs with a stone pestle. When the desert sends you water, you don't question the source. I sipped coffee from a tin cup, watching her work. Her movements were precise, practiced. Everything about her spoke of deep roots in this land. What does that mean for us? She looked up from her grinding. It means I was meant to find you that day, and you were meant to help me. The morning passed quiet, comfortable. We mended fence posts and tended my small garden. Naeli showed me how to mix clay and grass for stronger adobe patches. I taught her to shoe a horse properly. Working side by side felt natural as breathing. She moved with purpose, never wasted motion. When she laughed at my clumsy attempts to weave grass rope, the sound rang clear as creek water. By afternoon, we heard horses approaching. My hand moved to my rifle, but Naeli shook her head. Apache horses, she said. My family comes. 6 riders crested the hill, led by an elderly woman with silver braids and knowing eyes. Naeli's mother had come calling, just as her daughter promised she would. The old woman dismounted with the fluid grace of someone half her age. She studied me from head to toe, then spoke rapid Apache to her daughter. Naeli answered with respect but firmness. She asks if you're the one who saved my life. Naeli translated. I told her yes. She wants to know if you are worthy of greater gifts. What kind of gifts? Naeli's mother approached me directly. When she spoke, her English was careful but clear. My daughter lives because of your kindness. In our ways, life debt must be honored properly. She gestured to the youngest rider, a woman about Naeli's age with gentle eyes and steady bearing. This is Ayana, my other daughter. She would make you fine, wife, if you prove worthy. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at Ayana, then at Naeli, then back at the old woman. Ma'am, I'm honored by the offer, but you saved Apache life, the mother continued. Now Apache family offers you Apache daughter. She is skilled in healing plants, strong with horses, knows the old ways. Good match for man who shows courage and kindness. Ayana stepped forward and bowed her head respectfully. When she looked up, her eyes met mine briefly before drifting away. Modest but unafraid. She carried herself like the desert mesquite, rooted in her own strength, able to survive drought and fire. This wasn't some desperate arrangement born of convenience. This was honor, gratitude, a recognition of shared spirit across two cultures. That evening, all of us shared a simple meal around my fire. Conversation flowed in mixed languages, bridged by gestures and patience. I felt like a guest in my own home, caught between unfamiliar words and traditions. But instead of discomfort, I felt deep respect. They were opening their lives to me, offering something sacred. As night deepened, I walked outside to study the star-scattered sky. My heart felt unsettled, but not with fear. Marriage had never occupied my thoughts before. Yet here it was, clear as moonlight above. The desert, so often a place of loneliness, now offered companionship. The possibility of building something lasting. For the first time in years, I felt called to something greater than mere survival. Over the following days, Ayana and her family visited often. She and I began speaking in fragments, my broken Apache, her careful English. We laughed at mistakes, shared stories in half-understood sentences, worked side by side when words failed. With each passing day, I saw her more clearly, not just her strength and loyalty, but the warmth in her smile, the patience in her spirit, the gentleness she showed even the smallest creatures. I began understanding what her mother had recognized in me. This wasn't merely about gratitude. It was about balance. I had saved one daughter's life. In return, they offered me a life worth living, one filled with meaning and shared purpose. When I looked at Ayana, I no longer saw just a stranger brought to my door. I saw the possibility of family, of a future rooted in respect, built where two worlds met under vast American skies. One evening, as desert wind whispered outside, Naomi's mother placed my hand in Ayana's. No words were spoken. None were needed. The bond was clear, the promise already made. I looked into Ayana's eyes, and for the first time, she didn't look away. Instead, she smiled, soft yet steady. In that smile, I found my answer to all the confusion I'd carried. What had begun as simple kindness in the desert had led me here, to love unspoken, respect unshakable, and a new beginning neither of us had expected. The stars wheeled overhead as we sat together in comfortable silence. Three cultures meeting in the space between one heartbeat and the next.